some info on that Trail Tech, that universal voltage regulator. So it's 7003-AC01 is the one I got. You can see it's 20 bucks or a little bit more here and there. That's pretty cool. As I just saw this. I might start looking at using these. This is a full wave setup for the engines that maybe I swap in that have full waves, but it has the adjustability on it too for regulating the voltage. So I might look at buying one of those and incorporating that into a build so that I can adjust the power that's getting to the, I guess maybe the AC side of things for the headlight. Alright, let's jump over and look at the schematics on this wire harness, the OEM line at a schematic of the K2 harness that I'm using that doesn't use a battery. So what we're looking at on this area of the schematic is this is the original Honda engine points and condenser setup. These are the two coils that are on that flywheel plate primary coil, which is your spark related for the engine, and then your auxiliary coil here that has three leads coming out: red, gray, white-ish, blue. So you got four wires that originally come out of this engine, and then you can see how this is a connector. This is that harness connector I just showed you earlier. And then you can see how the wires run to the key switch, which is represented here with the connection to the cylinder of the key switch, and you got these many pinouts on the key depending on where your key. There's off, run, headlight. There's 3 clicks on these key switches, so these pinouts will all correlate to where you got your key. And then this is your legend here for how that key switch is working, the main switch arrangement. So you can see you have the off feature where your key is turned to off, then you turn it on to the first one. You'll get, this first one on off when the key is in or out. You can see how the ignition is grounded out to earth. So you're gonna kill, no spark produced, no engine's gonna fire. Then you turn it on, that goes away. Then you're able to get ignition and spark. It also introduces that blue wire from your stator. So it's generating power to allow you to use the brake pedals, the brake switches. So it turns on your rear brake at this point on the on feature. You get no headlights at this on this setting. And then when you switch it to the third setting, that's your light setting. So you still, as you can see, still have a different source is powering your brakes at that point, this gray wire. But now you've got the red wire tying into the headlight, so then your headlight comes on. So that's a quick explanation of how that key switch works. So now that we have all this information, I'm going to be able to tie in that Chinese engine and pin it out to work with the stock harness to make sure we get all this electrical going to the lights. And then also that I'm using this key switch as my kill for the Chinese engine too. The problem, which isn't a problem, I'll do it real quick, is that this is getting 3 wires for the lighting setup, and we have 2 on the Chinese engine, but I'll get that all to work. Since we want to connect to that stock harness, and you're going to need, for a clean install, you're going to need the, I would call this the male end with these male spade connectors sticking out. You need to have that. Like, I have a bag of just old ones here and there, but if you have an old stator that doesn't work, you're going to rebuild it or something down the road, just snip this off so that you can get this part that's going to plug into our harness. And you want one that has 4 wires in it, so you can kind of use these as leads to tie into. That's a little tip. Or you're going to have to, I have a ton of them, but you got to buy the new connectors and the spade connectors that go with it. But this is a quick, easy way to do it, to steal from an old engine that doesn't run. So since we addressed what we're doing wire-wise, here's your connector onto the OEM harness. This is all taped up. You can't get to the back end of it to see what color wires are penned out and which orientation on this 4-pin connector. But I luckily have a ton of stators that I rebuild with, so this is the appropriate rebuild kit for this K2 harness. And if we look at it with this recess, or if you look at these connectors, you can see how they have that top area that has the groove in it to help orientate it correctly. So if we're looking at it with that part on top, you're going to see from the back end that the top left is your black spark, and then the 3 other wires are your wires that are going to get the auxiliary lighting working. So if you want to stop and write and take a note of that, you got black, red, blue, and then green on the far bottom corner. We have 3 wires from the lighting side OEM, and we have 2 from the Chinese engine. So here's how we'll do it real quick. So red is going to be ran by itself. That's the one that turns on when the key switch is on the headlight. But we have these 2, the blue and gray, that they do the same thing, but one's switching off and the other one's coming online to help keep the brake switch working. So I'm going to take the one of my leads and bifurcate it from the Chinese engine and just make it take care of both those. When the key switch is on, it's going to get power either setting. The other thing is you could take a jumper on the back side of your key switch, and that's a C2, and the gray is on C1 node. So if you did a jumper from C2 to C1, then you basically tie them both in, and then you just feed one power source to the C2 from that Chinese engine, and when it switches over, it's going to have power to the C3. So there's 2 ways to do it. I'm not gonna jumper on the back of the key switch. I'm gonna choose to make my lead turn into 2 leads to power this area. The connector now, the little sub connector to the stock harness. So we got our black, a red, and then our 2 wires tied together. That would be the blue and the gray color on the schematics. This is how we're going to hook up that Trailtech regulator. These are the 2 leads from the engine for the auxiliary lighting. And I did a duplex at the end of those wires. So we run the 2 leads that come from the Trailtech regulator into each one of these leads, and then we're going to build 2 more leads that are going to run to the stock harness to give the power. Just should pop in there. Alright, so we got our pigtails ready to connect to the Chinese wiring that we're working on. We got the leads ran for the regulated voltage now to the little sub harness connected to the OEM. The last thing that we have to do now is get our black wire connected to the sub harness so that we can kill the engine with the switch over here on the bike frame. So I'm going to go ahead and take this lead off this harness that comes with the Chinese engine. I'll cut it and use the black wire to connect into here, and then the green that's left is the ground. We'll find a good place to put a nice ground on this frame when we tuck all the wires in the back. So let's go ahead and get this black wire connected, and that's the last part. All wires are connected. I got my ground to my earth and frame so that I know my spark plug should work. Or at least, my spark high tension coil is going to work now that it has a ground. So let's do a test of the key off and the key on to make sure the spark is working as intended with the kill. Key switch on. Got spark on there, and then the key switch off. So no spark, so that's good. So that'll be wrapped for this kind of incorporating a Chinese engine into a hardtail bike. Just kind of give you guys, I did a CT70 and used a sub harness from Trail Buddy, and this one I wanted to show how you can actually use the part that comes with the engine and still get everything to work together. So we verified that we have spark, the key switch is killing it. The next step is I'm going to button up all these little details on this bike and then do a kick over, let the engine run, and that way I'll be able to test the headlights and make sure that operates as we intended as we built the harness to work. Couple little things that are little neat little things on this bike is little speedometer in there, but the mount, got to get that kind of worked out, a few details, and then I'm going to incorporate another Trailtech part. I don't know if it's in focus. Okay, this is a temperature gauge, so this is going to read, I made a little bracket that's just going to mount it right there, but this is going to read from the spark plug location, so we'll get a real good accurate reading of what the cylinder head conditions are as opposed to an oil gauge. So I'll get that hooked up, and obviously all the other parts, and then we'll kind of do the last video on this bike build. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe as always. Got some more stuff to come out.